Hello everybody, what is up? My name is John Solid, I'm Twitch's #1 hand model, and for today, we're coming at you with our definitive guide on how to rogue in Season of Discovery. Now, this guide is going to help you in just Season of Discovery. If you're looking on how to rogue in Classic Era, you're going to have to check out our other guide. But for here, we are going to show you how to dominate on Rogue in Season of Discovery, and boy is it brutal. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into our runes. For the head rune, I really like to choose Combat Potency. It does not really matter what you pick in this slot. Some of the other slots are definitely more locked in. This is what you need to pick, like for your cloak. For your cloak, you definitely want Fan of Knives. Fan of Knives is just so good. It's so beneficial. Like if somebody goes stealth near you or they vanish, you just press it and boom, they're back out. That's definitely the go-to for your back. For the chest rune, you want to get Slaughter Among Shadows. Slaughter Among Shadows is just insane. It is literally letting you backstab and ambush for 30 less energy. So that means that it's halved. So instead of 60, it is now 30. These next two slots are pretty much always locked in. You always pick Shadow Step to close the gap, and then you always pick Between the Eyes, because basically it's just a kidney shot and an eviscerate tied together. It is so good. It shows low damage here, but the damage is much higher because it scales off your attack power, and it just doesn't translate into the tooltip. For your feet rune, there's a split consensus on whether or not you use Waylay or Master of the Shadows. I personally use Master of the Shadows because I use Crippling Poison, but if you do not use Crippling Poison, you would want to use Waylay. Coming to poisons really fast, you always want to use Sebaceous Poison, and then your offhand weapon can be, whatever you'd like, but always Sebaceous. So you're definitely going to want to use defense on one of the rings. The second ring, it doesn't really matter. I just pick daggers. But this is the first rune that really comes into being subjective, and it is your Bracer rune. Personally, I always use Unfair Advantage. There's some arguments to Carnage, but I don't use Rupture or Garrote at all, so I don't use it. The only downside to using Unfair Advantage is that it procs into Warrior's Retaliation, and with that being a 30-minute cooldown, it's always up. And then also just a real quick tip when you're fighting warriors is to not pop evasion. When you pop evasion, they just gives them like a bajillion overpowers and they just kill you straight up outright. So again, I like Unfair Advantage. There's some arguments to be made for Carnage, but I don't use Rupture or Garrote enough to make those for myself. And that is why I use Unfair Advantage. Now for the hands runes, you always use Cutthroat. What Cutthroat does is it allows you to backstab or ambush your target from anywhere around them. It doesn't have to be just behind. And then in addition to that, you get a 15% chance to use your next ambush outside of stealth, which is gigantic. We're going to talk about it when we get to the gear. For talents, on the other hand, you basically use the same talents that we always use. Minus that we get Dirty Deeds instead of Hemorrhage, and then a few extra points in Ambush Crit. The rest of this is the same. Both of our other trees, our Combat Tree and our Subtlety Tree, are both exactly the same. Now, where this guide starts making sense is it starts making sense in the gearing section. So with all of these benefits that we've been getting, we're just going to try and increase them as much as humanly possible. PvP gear sucks, so we're going straight PvE. We do a 5-piece tier 2 and a 5-piece ZG. From the 5-piece tier 2, we get the immune from the gloves, but then on top of that, we get the 2-set, which makes whenever we use an opening move, it gives us our next move 100% less energy. So what this does is it allows us to constantly be getting free backstabs because we're proccing our ambushes out of stealth, and when we use the ambush out of stealth, it gives us a free another move. So we are constantly proccing this. And then the 4-set just basically gives us 2 Dark Moon Fair buffs. It's just insane. So then from the ZG set, we're getting 5% crit. We're getting 100% ambush when we combined our gear with our talents again. So again, we're making all of these little tiny transactions between gear, talents, and runes that are just coming to a focus here. Now, if all of that wasn't broken enough for you, we get the most absolutely busted thing of the spec, and it is this trinket right here. What this trinket does is it lets you get an ambush out of stealth, and then you get a free backstab and then you get another backstab, all from one proc of this trinket. Is absolutely insane. So let's go ahead and see all of this together in a duel on our friend over here. When you start PvP combat, your brain should switch into a reptile mode to where you only care about two things. And the two things that you care about are damage output and damage mitigation. So when we start off this duel, we're going to cheap shot him and start off from advantage. And when we're in advantage, all we're going to care about is... See, we only care about damage output. That probably sounded a little bit weird because I was reading off a script and the duel just went so fast it kind of caught me off guard. But, you know, that's just how rogue damage is right now. And so we're using all of our runes and our gear to basically just make ourselves an insane damage output. And really, nobody can live through it if you do it properly. And so we're going to just go over really quickly again on how you do everything. One of the things that I forgot to talk about in the gear section is your weapon. And your weapon is so important for backstab builds because like everything revolves around weapon damage. So what you really want is you want your highest high-end weapon to be in your main hand. So you don't care about the DPS and you don't care about the low end. So where you see that number right above the DPS, there's a 145. That's your high-end damage. You want to make sure that that is your, your in your main hand. So you have like your offhand has 126, but if this one had 125, we'd want to switch them into the main hand offhand. And the reason why is because of your backstab. So your backstab and your ambush and all of those moves, they all are percentage weapon damage. So that is why it's very important to have the highest weapon damage in that spot. So it is a little bit upsetting that Rogue is locked behind getting your at least 4-set tier 2 and then your 5-piece ZG. But once you get the gear, it really unlocks this crazy damage output spec that lets you almost like throw all of the other rules of PvP out the window and just focus on damage output. And I've got to tell you, if you are bad at PvP, being able to throw out all of the skills that you need to be able to survive and do the damage mitigation, it's so much better. So let's watch another duel really quick. All right, so for this duel, we're going to really focus on trying to keep him CC'd while keeping our damage output as high as possible. We asked him to trinket this very, very first cheap shot, so there should be a little bit more adversity as the previous duel that we had, to where we might have to think about some things that we have to do while maximizing our damage output, and he might make us get on the defensive. We don't know yet, but let's get into the duel. Damn it, John Soloed. You gotta fix these scripts. All the duels are ended before we even get finished saying what we want to say. So, as the guide comes to a close, I mean, we haven't really taught you much. We've taught you that this is how you do your insane burst, and that, you need this gear, and that, the talents are basically the same. But what you do get out of this guide is you get the foundations to being able to burst and actually kill someone, which is what you really need. All that other stuff, it just comes with you playing the game and, learning these different scenarios. And you have to fight the shaman 8 times. And you have to find that shaman that fights you properly, too, to be able to even get a start at where you need to learn that matchup. And so I can't teach you the matchups, but what I can teach you is I can teach you how to burst, and then I can let you go from there. If I can touch again on one final piece of closing information, it has to be something that was mentioned earlier in this guide, and it is when you are PvPing, the moment you enter PvP combat, your brain needs to switch off of whatever you were thinking and continuously think about 2 things and in the flow between them, and that is damage output and damage mitigation. Thank you. If you didn't find anything in this guide helpful, come complain to me on Twitter. I'm there all the time. But if you did find something helpful and you did want to like and subscribe, what are you doing just like and subscribing here? Don't just like and subscribe here. Come follow me on Twitch. We do a lot of silly goose things, PvPing. We have a really good silly goose time. Come over there. We have the beer counter, along with pizza and hot chicks and fucking killing. I'm just like Crumbogulus Michael. I just like killing. Come on, follow me here. Later.